Hey, what's up guys, it's Disturbed. Today I'm going to be showing you guys what I believe to be the very best solo build for doing PvE and occasionally running into PvP. This build is meant for being able to be really survivable or just have a lot of survivability. I mean, in like playing solo in the Dark Zone, if you don't really have any friends to play with, this build will definitely be for you. And it has a good amount of survivability without losing a lot of damage, so there isn't a huge trade-off for damage there. You're not going for 500k toughness and 3000 firearms and then shooting marshmallows at people. No, the build will actually have a lot of survivability, and since it is a solo build, I want to make sure that you have enough damage to be able to kill NPCs quite effectively. And I also made it to where you can min-max it for PvE, so let's say you're only doing HVTs or you're only doing underground or you're only doing challenging missions. You can min-max it like that, and I'll explain how to do that. But the way that I have it set up right now for me, just because it was easier to set up for me and just because I wanted to have it set to where you can also use the build to defend yourself in the Dark Zone. So let's say you're doing solo Dark Zone because it's really easy to get loot there and it's a lot of fun in the Dark Zone. But then occasionally people try to go rogue on you. This build will allow you to kind of defend yourself. It's not going to be the best in PvP, but it is what it is. I just thought that I would attempt to accommodate for that. And just for solo players that want to be able to do some PvP and do PvE, this build will kind of suit all their needs and hopefully work for them, just so they don't have to switch out a bunch of different builds depending upon what they're doing. So before I get into it, I do want to say that at the very end there is gameplay, by the way, so if you want to see that, you can just skip to the very end and I'll be showing you guys how I kill NPCs and everything like that. But also, my gear is not min-max. I'll be going over a bunch of ways that I could improve upon my build and everything, but I made a pretty decent outline, and I mean, as it stands right now, it's pretty damn functional. So I just decided that, might as well start making the video now. I didn't want to wait too long to make the video, and I'm just going to be going over what things that I can improve upon in the build anyways. So it's really not that big of a deal. So starting off with the gear sets that I have, there are a few different combinations that you can go with. I decided to go with 4-piece Alpha Bridge for the weapon talents. One big thing about this build is that I'm going to be using Predatory, which gives me a lot of health after I kill an NPC, and since I'm playing solo, I'm going to be killing NPCs over and over again, and I'm always going to be getting the last killing blow. So having this up, it's 20 seconds, it's not going to give you a huge amount of damage, but when I was trying to solo the underground earlier in one of my last live streams, the thing that I noticed the most excuse me, was that I was constantly running out of health, and I didn't have ways to heal myself because my first aid was on cooldown, and I ended up running out of medkits because NPCs, when you're playing solo, they do a pretty good amount of damage. So having Predatory up, you're constantly killing NPCs, so you'll pretty much have this up all the time. 35% health might not seem like a lot, but since it's over the span of 20 seconds, and you're going to be pairing this with Nomad, you're pretty much going to be at full health almost all the time, and you're going to have a lot of survivability due to this. So Predatory plays a huge factor in this build, and that's probably why I have Alpha Bridge, so I don't have to sacrifice a huge major other talent in order to use this. There are different ways you can use a build where you don't have to use Predatories, and I'll get into that in a minute. So I have 4 Alpha Bridge. Also, another thing that's great about Alpha Bridge is the 100% health regen. It's not amazing, but it is just giving you extra health. It's just a little bit faster. It's not amazing, but is what it is. And then the 5% weapon damage isn't that bad of a bonus either. And then for the other two pieces, I decided to go for Nomad because I'm getting 15% health on kill. Now, the reason I decided to go for this is because, like I said, you're killing NPCs very frequently, and pair this with Predatory, you're nearly unstoppable when killing NPCs. It's going to be really hard for you to die. You're going to have to try to die, honestly, because like I can even face tank the huge NPCs, the heavy machine gunners guys, and Predatory will keep me up, and if I need to, I can use a heal, and I can use a medkit, and by then that person will probably already be dead, and then I'll regen a huge amount of my health. So Nomad is really good for that, just keeping you at full health almost all of the time. Now, the reason I decided to go for this again, it gives a lot of survivability, but I'm not sacrificing a lot to be able to use this. Like, if I wasn't to use Nomad, I'd probably go for like Savage, and then maybe a specialized backpack, or a Tenacious mask, or a refreshed mask so that I got extra healing, or something like that. So it's really not that big of a trade-off. I'm losing crit chance and possibly damage or steal power or a little bit more survivability depending upon what I'm doing, but I think the Nomad gives overall a lot more survivability, especially when going solo. In a team, it's probably not the best to use Nomad, of course, but this is a solo build, and I think this is definitely best in slot for this. Now, another way that you can set this build up is you can use 3 Hunter's Faith and 3 Nomad. The 3 Nomad bonus is actually kind of nice. It administers a small dose of constant healing, allowing the user to regenerate beyond segments in the health bars. It's okay. It's not the best in the world because it doesn't heal super quickly, but it's pretty nice. So if you wanted to go for 300's Faith for the headshot damage, you could definitely do that. That pairs amazingly with an LMG. But the thing about the headshot damage is that I wanted this build to accommodate everybody, and a lot of people really just don't have that good of accuracy. And they're not. It's only worth it to run this if you're constantly chaining headshots. And since I want this build to be able to defend yourself in PvP with, headshot damage isn't going to be the most ideal because you're not going to be able to just chain headshots in PvP. Like, if you have really good accuracy, then you can, but it's a bit more difficult in PvP to just land a bunch of headshots. Against NPCs, though, it's really easy, so if you're not worried about doing the Dark Zone and stuff, Hunter's Faith will be an amazing option for you. Personally, though, I just like to go for Alpha Bridge. Another great setup would just be 3 Hunter's Faith and 2 Nomad, and then Savage Gloves if you just want to do a bunch of extra damage, but then you don't have the continuous healing, so then you're losing out on Predatory unless you decide to go for it on your gun, but then you're sacrificing a lost talent for that, so it's a trading situation. It just depends on what you really have at your disposal. But all three of those setups are really good. The Alpha Bridge, the 300's Faith, 3 Nomad, or 300's Faith, 2, 300's Faith, 2 Nomad, and then 1 Savage. All those are pretty good setups. Or you could even go 300's Faith instead of Savage, 2 Nomad, and get a, Refreshed Mask. It improves your healing. I don't really think it's worth it to go for that. But it all just depends on what you have at your disposal. Just try to get the 2 Nomad. This is a really big part of it. And then just try to get as much damage as you can. Even Predator's Mark maybe will be okay. Maybe even Banshee also. It really just depends on what you have available to you. Just try to get the Nomad, really. That's pretty much all that matters. Of course, Alpha Bridge does matter because you're getting the health regen and the huge amount of extra damage. But Nomad is what's allowing you to be super survivable. I keep saying that. Have a lot of survivability. And pair that with Predatory, it works really nicely. So now I'm just going to go into my Toughness, Skill, Power, Firearms, then I'll go into the guns that I decided to use, and then I'll just look at my individual attribute rolls on my gear. I'll go into some talents, and then I'll show some gameplay at the end. So, starting off, my firearms and my stamina. I usually decide to have this pretty balanced with each other. I don't really particularly like going like 400k toughness and like 4,000 firearms, or vice versa, have like really low toughness and high firearms. I like to have it like this. It's really just up to what you like personally. I think this works great because I do enough damage and I seem to have enough survivability, but it's really just up to what you're able to do with your current build and what you're comfortable with. In terms of skill power really doesn't matter as much anymore, and I decided to go for crit chance on the mask instead of skill power. I can't really get skill power anywhere else because of course you're going to be going for, I have a bug on my monitor, what the hell. Of course you're going to be going for armor on your gear mods as opposed to going for skill power, and then on your backpack you want armor as well. So skill power really isn't that big of a factor with this build. A lot of people request to see my stat sheets, so I guess I'll just give in. It's not the best in the world, and it's really, really subjective to what your build is and what you're doing. So the fact that people depend on, I'm not going to say anything, but take everything with a grain of salt. The stat sheet really isn't super representative of how much damage I'm doing, like the DPS stat, all those things. But regardless, 32% crit chance, 78% crit damage, a shitload of headshot damage. I have some stability, and then my toughness. As you can see, I got 352,000 there, and I have 58.29% armor, which is a pretty damn good amount of armor. I need to add these people. Oh my god. It's a pretty good amount of armor. I would say try to get around 55 to 60%. You just need to go for armor on every single piece that you can. But yeah, that's pretty much it for my stat sheet. I'm getting a lot of friend requests. What is going on? Alright, I'll just ignore that for now. So, in terms of the guns that you're going to be using, there are two things that you can use here. I decided to go for an LMG because LMGs are really good in PvP. They have really high headshot damage, and the extra mag size is really nice when playing solo. Otherwise, I'd probably go for an assault rifle if I'm just doing PvE. But like I said, I want this build to work for PvP and PvE, and in PvP, an LMG is better. Especially if people are trying to 2v1 you or something, it's much easier to kill them with an LMG because of the bigger mag size and everything like that. And also, just against NPCs, a big mag is really helpful. Pair that with 1 is none. It takes you a really long time to have to reload, and if you get caught in a reload at the bad time and then you have to like jump around a corner and stuff, it can kind of hurt you. Also, assault rifles such as the LVOAC have a lot of recoil, and they're not as easy to control. So if you're to use Hunter's Faith, I'd probably say go with an LMG if your aim isn't that great, because it's really hard to use an LVOA and maintain a really good amount of like recoil control. So I go for LMGs, but assault rifles are pretty much just as good. Assault rifles are going to be a little bit better in a PvE scenario just because of the extra RPM, the base damage, and the enemy armor damage. Pair this all together, it does a lot of damage, but LMGs and assault rifles are really good. I would not suggest going for SMGs or anything, because with SMGs they don't do as much damage in PvE as LMGs or assault rifles would, just because the base damage on them is significantly lower, but they're good in PvP. But yeah, it just really depends on what you have good rolls for and everything. And of course, you can't go with shotguns or snipers or something because you're using Alpha Bridge. But if you're using Hunter's Faith, you could use an LMG and a sniper, or a shotgun and an LMG, or a shotgun and a assault rifle, just whatever works for you and whatever gun talents you have that are really good on certain guns, and etc. etc. It's really subjective. So since my build is running Alpha Bridge, I'm just going to go into some talents that are good. Now, mine, like I said, I'm trying to accommodate it and make it to where that it will work great for people that are running or playing in the Dark Zone, really, and can defend themselves in a PvP scenario. So, with that being said, I don't have PvE talents, which would let me do way more damage against NPCs, such as Destructive or Ferocious. But if you're only doing HVTs and Underground, getting those would be probably better than any other talent here. Also, I'm using an M60, so I don't have Responsive, but Responsive is really good as well. But let's get into my talents. So I have Vicious, Brutal, Unforgiving, Deadly, Fierce, and Predatory. Predatory is probably one of, if not the most important here. Though it doesn't give you any damage bonus, it's just really, it's a keystone of this build. It really puts everything together and lets you stay at your good amount of health, and it lets you solo content. So Predatory is one of the most important things here. Vicious is great for the extra crit chance, Brutal is great, Deadly is great, Fierce is great, all pretty good talents. The only thing that I would maybe reroll off would be Unforgiving, though Unforgiving is pretty damn nice. It's just not the best here. If I'm trying to do PvP, I could go for Competent, or even Unforgiving in PvP is really good, because, yeah, Unforgiving actually isn't that bad because you're soloing stuff and you're going to be at low health pretty frequently. So having Unforgiving and Vicious is a good combo. So like at full health you have that extra crit chance, but then when you drop below full health you get extra damage from Unforgiving. So it's a nice combination. But you could also go for Destructive here, you could go for Ferocious here, you could go for Responsive if you're using an assault rifle. You can't get Responsive on LMGs, unfortunately. And you could either go for Competent. So it just really depends on what you have. Mine probably isn't perfect, and that's one of the reasons why I decided not to do a Hunter's Faith build, because I didn't have the 3 perfect talents on a gun, or namely a assault rifle or even a LMG. So I just decided to go for Alpha Bridge because that's the pieces that I had, and it was the easiest to put together, and it still isn't bad at all. It's really nice. But if you're going with just solely PvE, I would say definitely make sure to get Destructive, because that will be giving you more damage than any other thing in the entire game. And besides that, just go for Predatory, and then there's a bunch of other talents that are good: Adept, Fierce, Brutal, Deadly, Responsive if you're using assault rifle, Unforgiving, Competent, Vicious. All these things are really good talents. So now that we talked about weapons, let's get into weapon mods. So even regardless of what gun you're using, since this is going to be specifically kind of for PvE, that's what you're going to be mainly doing, I decided to go for headshot damage on the scope and headshot damage on the muzzle. Though if you have high crit chance, if you're using Savage Gloves, or if you just have, like, I don't know, high crit chance on, you have Fierce and Vicious or something, and you're just using the Precision talent, or you're using Pulse or something, and you're comfortable with the amount of crit chance you have, you can also go for crit damage if that's all that you have. But headshot damage I prefer against NPCs, because I will be headshotting them more than I will be critting them, regardless of my crit chance against NPCs. But against players, crit damage is probably going to be better depending on your accuracy. It's really subjective to the person, but both are really good. Just get a combination of headshot damage, crit damage, and crit chance, and you'll be good to go. All 3 work. No matter what the top stat is, it can either be crit damage in the top stat or crit chance in the top stat. All work pretty well. Crit damage isn't going to be the best with LMGs or assault rifles, crit chance, because you don't have crit damage on your gun like you would, or as much crit damage on your gun as you would with like an SMG or something. But it's still good to go for. And then on the muzzle, I have headshot damage and crit chance as well. I would prefer to have headshot damage, crit chance, and crit damage, but I just didn't get the best roll. But again, just try to find a good combination. And then for the grip, you're going to go for crit damage. A lot of people decide to go for reload speed. Even with an M60, I don't think it's worth it to go for reload speed. On sheet DPS, the extra crit damage will be giving you way more, because you only reload 1 out of every, like, 1 minute of shooting or something with an M60, just because of how big the mag is. Pair that with 1 is none. You're not reloading super frequently, So having more crit damage is going to be giving you way more damage per second than if you were to have extra reload speed. So just depends on what you like to use and what you have available. I just really like crit damage. And then on the magazine, this is pretty much not debatable at all for almost any gun type. Mag size, crit chance, rate of fire. Pretty simple because you can't get headshot damage on here, and then you can get crit damage, but it's a very negligible amount. It's only like 4%, so it's way more worth it to go for crit chance. And then the rate of fire is pretty nice as well, especially with an M60. Alright, now that we have guns covered, hopefully everybody knows what to do there. Let's talk about attribute rolls on gear. So for the chest piece, of course you're going to go for armor, and then you can either go for health or damage to elites. Damage to elites will just let you do a shitload of extra damage against NPCs. I have that on my Hunter's Faith, which I use against NPCs very frequently just to do, of course, a lot more damage. So it's really just up to you. Either health or damage to elites is what I recommend. On the mask, you can either go for skill power, or you can go for crit chance, or possibly health on kill if you want to just get a little bit more out of it. I prefer to go for crit chance though, just to get a little bit more damage. I don't think the 4% health on kill is that significant. And I couldn't roll this thing anyways because it was on electronics beforehand. So is what it is. Crit chance, skill power, and health on kill, all pretty good options. On the knee pads, of course, you're going to go for armor. Try to get enemy armor damage on the last slot if you can. I unfortunately wasn't able to. I use this for PvP mostly though, with my Alpha Bridge, because that's what I like to run. So it's not that big of a deal that I don't have enemy armor damage there, but enemy armor damage will just let you do a shitload of extra damage against NPCs. So if you can, try to get it there, but it's not that big of a deal. It is a huge damage boost. So, and then on the backpack, of course, you're going to be going for armor everywhere, and then on the gloves, look how bad this roll is, 882. I think that is actually the worst possible roll that I could have gotten, whatever. But for the attributes, you're going to go for crit chance and crit damage, of course, like always. And then you can either go for LMG damage if you want to protect yourself in PvP, or you can go for damage to elites if you're just killing NPCs, but I decided to go for the LMG damage because I wanted this build to work in both scenarios. And then for the holster, of course, you're going to be going for armor, and in terms of modding your gear, you're just going to be going for armor. And then for the performance mods, I decided to go for first aid self-heal, just giving me that extra amount of survivability, which is really nice. And then for the skills, you're going to go for first aid, of course, like always, overdose or booster shot, whatever you feel most comfortable with. I go for overdose because it heals for significantly more than booster shot ever would, even if you were to use vigorous chest. And then for the last skill, you can go with like flashbang. If you want to stun them, you can go with a fire turret. Fire turrets, I've heard a lot of people have really good luck with this in killing NPCs. It just, mitigates a lot of the NPCs that you have to deal with at one time. You can go with Seeker Mines, with gas or cluster, or the fire. You can go with a pulse for extra damage. It's really up to you and what you personally like to use. But yeah, and then for the talents, I have an interesting mix of talents here. There's a lot of different things that you can use. One of the most important is going to be on the move. Kill a hostile while moving to reduce incoming damage. So this is just paired with predatory and health on kill from Nomad. This is going to be amazing. It just reduces the amount of damage you take after killing somebody while moving, which we'll be doing pretty frequently. So you have almost a constant reduced amount of damage, which is awesome. One is none. Pair this with an LMG. You're going to be getting a lot of your ammo back and not having to reload as often, which is really good in PvE. Precision is also nice if you're not using pulse. Even if you are using pulse when it's on cooldown, this will give you a good amount of crit chance and crit damage when it is on cooldown when you headshot somebody, so that's pretty cool. Adrenaline, use a med kit when not at full health to receive an overheal. I use this in PvP just for survivability. If I were just to do just PvE, I probably wouldn't think this is super, helpful because I'm relying on predatory and health on kill. And first aid and med kit will be enough by itself, so I don't really need the adrenaline, so I'd probably go for precision for the extra damage. You could even go for tactical advance for a lot of extra damage over precision if you wanted to. And then critical save, which is really nice. Use the med kit during low health to increase damage resistance by 40% for 10 seconds. So, pair, critical save, on the move, nomad, predatory, a heal, and a med kit. You're nearly invincible. It's really good. I'm pretty glad with how this build turned out, and I'll show some gameplay at the end here, or actually right now I'll show some gameplay. Show you guys that the build is pretty nice. Unfortunately, I couldn't get any PvP gameplay. I ran around for like 30 minutes, couldn't find anybody. I just decided, whatever, I'll just kill NPCs, because that's mainly what this build is for, and I don't really need to prove that it works well against players, because I'm not claiming that it's an amazing solo PvP build. I'll probably make a separate video for that anyways. This build is just meant to work in PvE, and if you need to you can defend yourself against players trying to gank you. That's mainly what it's for. So hopefully I helped out some of you solo players. If you enjoyed, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe for videos similar to this one. I'll see you guys later. Peace out. Enjoy the gameplay.